as we learned about Binance yesterday, we're going to talk to CoinDesk Global Policy and Regulation Managing Editor Nick Day, who's also the editor of CoinDesk's State of Crypto newsletter. Good morning, Nick.
Good morning.
All right, break down what's going on for us. We just learned about this lawsuit. All three of us weren't surprised. Were you surprised?
No, we've known that this is coming for a while. I think the only question left was when the SEC was going to sue Coinbase, but clearly the SEC saw it yesterday or this week as a good timing for a 1-2 punch. It's also worth noting that today 10 different states announced that they filed a show cause order against Coinbase as well, basically saying that they have 4 weeks to say, okay, here's how we're not violating securities laws, or they might be issued with a cease and desist order from operating in these states. So not a great day for Coinbase, not a great week for Binance either.
Nick, any insight on the timing here? Because clearly these cases have been building for weeks. I mean, if you look at sort of the SEC charges, they're very meticulously put together. Any reason why it's yesterday and today, or just a coincidence? It might be speculative, but I'm just curious what you think about the timing here.
I can't speak to the timing for this week in particular. It does kind of make sense that we'll see, these two cases so close to each other, though, because the allegations are, largely similar. If you look at the actual the counts that they're filing under, violations of the Exchange Act, violations of the Securities Act, the specific charges are really similar. The actual details of the suits themselves are very different. Binance has been accused of, a lot of, other activities that Coinbase has not been accused of, including, commingling customer funds and, secretly controlling a U.S. entity. Coinbase has not been accused of those kinds of charges. But the actual securities and, trading platform charges are, functionally the same. It's failure to register, failure to distinguish between the different aspects of the business, offering the general public access to things that the SEC says are securities. Those are pretty similar.
Nick, can you just game it out? What might happen here? So say the SEC wins in both cases. Can you just quickly summarize what are the consequences here for Binance and Coinbase?
Yeah, well, obviously, so let's talk about Coinbase first, right? Because obviously, they've done the whole, we're a regulated U.S. exchange thing. If Coinbase loses this lawsuit and the SEC has a court victory saying, all right, if you want to trade cryptos, or specifically things that we believe are crypto securities, then you have to set up the 3 different businesses, an exchange, a clearinghouse, and a broker. You have to go through the whole registration process. The tokens that you're listing have to have also gone through that registration process. It's a huge, implication for every U.S. crypto exchange, basically saying that, okay, well, unless you're only listing Bitcoin, then you have to go through this entire process. It's going to be a huge, financial and regulatory burden. I don't think most exchanges in the U.S. are, even able or up to the, task of dealing with all that. If Binance loses, obviously the same thing for the U.S. side, but also, some of the allegations for the Binance suit are that Binance had access to U.S. Bank accounts, to funds from U.S. customers. So the implications for Binance are that they might lose access to, what seems to have been a well-funded customer base, and obviously there's also this ongoing CFTC lawsuit against Binance, which we haven't heard from in a little bit, but that's still out there as well. Basically, Binance is facing a lot of charges.
So, forgive me if I forgot, but Coinbase, didn't they do some acquisitions a while ago in sort of these 3 different fields? They keep acquiring, they kept acquiring these kind of small companies and things like that. How hard? I guess the question is, does the SEC want them to just turn on a switch and say, okay, we're going to go through our acquisitions to do all this stuff? It almost seems like it's just sort of oh, okay, well, fine, we'll do all the paperwork, sure. But they seem to have some of these things in place, no? Or am I dreaming?
Yeah. Well, no, Coinbase has definitely acquired, I think, a broker-dealer in the past, possibly an ATS, although I don't remember for sure on that. The problem is, it's not just Coinbase, right? If Coinbase registers and splits up its business into those three different components, the exchange, the broker, the clearinghouse, that's one thing. You still have the issuer side. And in the US, at least, securities issuers have to go through, its own disclosure and registration process. And we've seen some crypto tokens try and do that. And, for the most part, they haven't gotten anywhere. If Coinbase has to go through this process, then the tokens that it lists also will have to go through this process. Now, in the SEC lawsuit this morning, it pointed out that Coinbase Wallet offers access to thousands of different cryptocurrencies. And, I think it's safe to assume most of those are not going to even bother trying to go through this kind of registration or disclosure process. So it's very possible that access to those tokens will suddenly be yanked. Most of the tokens that do try are, will they have the funding and resources to actually go through it? Will they have the willingness to go through it? Or will they rather prefer to exit the US and, just hope to see people trade on DEXs or, wherever else?
Nick, based on your reporting and your coverage of the space, what's the likelihood of both of these cases going to trial, or do you think that they'll settle?
I don't think Coinbase is going to settle. It's well funded. And we've heard from officials at Coinbase in the past. If they settle, I don't think it would be like a great outcome for them. So my guess right now is they're more likely to go to trial. Binance, I think, is in a similar boat. They've already said that they're going to, quote, vigorously defend in, I think, like 3 different statements against the SEC allegations. So I imagine that will also go to trial. And, for them, I think dragging this out for as long as possible also probably helps in their favor.
Nick, thanks very much for joining us this morning. That was CoinDesk Global Policy and Regulation Managing Editor Nick Day. Don't forget to sign up for the State of Crypto newsletter on CoinDesk.com.